They say brides glow on the night before their wedding. I remember looking at my reflection and thinking I looked like a ghost. The dress was already on. I tried it on just to see, just to imagine one last time how I'd look when I walked down that aisle. Ivory silk off the shoulder, delicately embroidered with pearls I'd sewn in myself. My mother's veil draped over my curls, still faintly scented with lavender sachets she kept in her closet. It should have felt like a dream. But something was wrong. I couldn't name it. Not exactly. Just this weight in my chest like I'd swallowed a stone. A twisting unease that made the air feel thicker. The light too soft, too staged. The room looked beautiful but hollow. Like someone had arranged it for a painting, and not for me. I was holding a letter. His letter. I'd written it that morning, after barely sleeping. I hadn't wanted to, but I needed to. There were things I couldn't say out loud, things I hadn't had the courage to face until the night before forever. So I wrote it. Every word. My fear, my love, my truth. And I decided to give it to him. I thought maybe it would bring us closer, that it would remind him who I was underneath all the silk and smiles. The girl who used to walk barefoot through his family's vineyard, daring him to chase her. The girl who listened to his music before he ever played it for a crowd. The girl he once said he couldn't live without. That was who I was, wasn't it? There was a knock at the door. Soft, gentle, familiar. When I opened it, she stood there. Her hair was different. Darker, straighter. But it was still her. The girl from my university dorm. The one who used to say she hated wearing dresses and always borrowed my lip gloss before big presentations. My friend. Her eyes skimmed the dress before she smiled. You look radiant. I smiled back. I just wanted to see it one more time. She stepped inside like she owned the room, walked straight to my vanity, picked up my perfume bottle and spritzed the air. I thought he might have come to see you tonight, she said. You know, the whole can't wait another day thing. I shook my head. He's with his father going over guest lists. Security. She turned toward me and tilted her head. Do you ever wonder if you're too good for all this? I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what she meant. She walked over slowly, her heels quiet on the carpet, and stopped just in front of me. Her voice dropped. He's going to marry you tomorrow, but that doesn't mean he really sees you. And then. I don't remember the moment it happened. There was something in her hand, something sharp. I remember the sound more than the pain, the way the letter fell to the floor, the rustle of silk as I stumbled backward. I tried to speak, tried to ask her why, but the words got caught somewhere between my throat and the blood. The last thing I saw was her leaning down, gently picking up my veil, folding it into her coat pocket like it was hers. Then black. No screams, no bright lights. Just a suffocating silence. And then nothing. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I felt was dirt under my fingernails. Not silk, not satin sheets. Just grit. Cold, dry grit beneath my fingertips and the sting of something sharp in my palm. The air smelled like vinegar and ash, like old wood and rust. A single shaft of sunlight cut through a tiny square window, illuminating a floor that had never been mopped properly. I blinked hard once, twice. It wasn't a dream. The pain was real, but it was different now. No blood, no gown, no veil. Just a body that felt wrong. Smaller, maybe lighter, but sore. My limbs ached in unfamiliar ways. Like I'd spent hours scrubbing something, not dying on the floor of a bridal suite. I sat up too quickly and hit my head on the underside of a wooden beam. A bunk bed. My hands flew to my head, but they weren't. My hands. The nails were chipped, the skin dry, blistered at the edges, calluses where mine had been soft. I scrambled to my feet and turned toward a cracked mirror on the opposite wall, barely hanging by a crooked nail. The girl who looked back at me had freckles. Sharp cheekbones, hair cut ragged just past her shoulders. Reddish-brown, frizzy at the ends. Her eyes were still green, but not the same shade as mine. Lighter, pale, like moss instead of jade. I stared into the reflection and whispered, "What is this?" The door slammed open behind me. "Amara, get moving. Miss Celine's bath isn't going to draw itself." That name, Amara. It echoed in my bones. Unfamiliar, but heavy. I didn't move. Not fast enough. The woman in the doorway sighed and stormed in. She grabbed my wrist and yanked me forward with a strength that caught me off guard. Don't play dumb. You were lucky she took you in after your mother's death. Don't ruin it now. I was shoved out into a narrow hallway, worn wallpaper, low ceilings, faint echoes of music somewhere above us. I knew this house, the Mercer estate, but not from this angle. From below. As we moved up the servants' stairwell, I caught glimpses of polished marble through the cracks in the doorways, gold-framed paintings, light pouring in from grand windows. I remembered those halls. I used to walk them hand in hand with. He turned the corner at the top of the staircase, and I froze. Lucian. His hair was shorter now, neater, a little more salt than I remembered at the temples. But those eyes, deep-set, grey, like stormlight, stopped me in my tracks. He passed me without looking, without seeing me. Just a passing glance to a maid standing out of place. And then he was gone. My breath caught. He was alive. I was alive, and I was nothing to him. The other maid pulled me forward again, grumbling something about morning rituals and silver trays. But my head was spinning, my heart pounding. I had died. I remembered the blood, the veil, the betrayal. And now I was in her house, their house. The woman who had smiled while stabbing me now owned me. And the man who once promised me forever didn't even recognize my face. But I recognized hers, Celine. And I was going to serve her, clean her bath, dress her smile while she played lady of the manor with the man I died loving. My fingers curled into fists. Fine. Let her believe she'd won. I had been given a second life. This time I would take it back. Not through rage, not through screams, but slowly, silently. And when she fell, I'd be the one holding the tray. The first time I stood behind her again, I had to remind myself not to tremble. Celine sat in front of the mirror, dabbing perfume onto her wrists as if she didn't have blood on her hands. As if she hadn't once leaned in close with a smile on her lips and a knife tucked behind her breath, she hummed lightly. Off-key, like always. Be careful with the pins, she said, not even glancing at me. I nodded once and began twisting her hair into the shape she requested. She didn't recognize my touch, not my hands, not my eyes in the mirror. She saw a servant, nothing more. And I let her. Every second near her was a test. Could I stay silent long enough? Still enough? Could I serve the woman who wore my ring? Slept in my room? Walked beside the man who once promised me 1,000 tomorrows? I could, because I wasn't here to scream. I was here to take it all back. Later that morning I was sent to deliver fresh linens to the West Wing. The hallway was quieter there, the air sharper, like the memories hadn't had time to rot yet. I walked slower than I should have. Letting my eyes trace the framed portraits, him in military dress, him and Selina at a fundraiser, him alone in black and white, smiling that quiet smile that always made my heart ache a little. I hated that it still did. As I turned the corner, I stopped short. Lucian stood there, closer than before, alone this time, reading a leather-bound file, lips pressed in concentration. I should have kept walking. I should have looked down, said nothing. But I didn't. I just stood there watching, waiting for something I couldn't name. He looked up for a moment. Our eyes locked. There was no thunderbolt, no gasp of recognition. Just a pause, a flicker, a long enough glance to notice something not quite ordinary in a maid's face. He blinked. You're new, he said. My throat tightened. I nodded. He studied me. His gaze drifted. Not in a hungry way. Not cruel, but searching like he was trying to place a song he hadn't heard in years. What's your name? I had to answer. Not my name. Hers. Amara, I said softly. He nodded once. Amara. Right. Well, carry on. And then he walked past me. I stood still in the silence he left behind, my chest hollow and ringing. He didn't know me, but something in his voice cracked slightly when he said my name. Not my real one, the borrowed one. It was small, insignificant, maybe, but it was the first shift in the air I'd felt since waking up in this body, the first crack in the surface. He was seeing me, if only for a second, and that was enough. Later that night, I returned to the servant quarters, curled on the stiff mattress in the dark, and whispered my old name just to hear it out loud again. Then I whispered, his Lucian. He didn't see me now, but he would. One day, I wouldn't chase him. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't unravel my dignity just to be remembered, but I would stay close enough to be seen. And eventually he'd remember, because love doesn't vanish, even when it's buried beneath someone else's face. It didn't take long for the shine to wear off, the shine on her lies, her voice, her crown. Celine had always been good at smiling for crowds, but behind closed doors, she ruled like a woman who thought everyone owed her something, especially the help. She wasn't cruel with fists. No, she was too polished for that. But her words, they cut deeper. Always just loud enough for us to hear, never loud enough to be repeated. She once made a girl cry for folding her scarf wrong. Called her common. Another time, she sent back a tray I'd prepared, then had me stand beside it for 15 minutes while she picked out every imperfection in front of her visiting friends. Amara's not the brightest, she'd said once. But she's obedient. Obedience matters. I smiled. I nodded. I poured tea with perfect posture, because obedience is a mask, too. The other maids avoided her when they could, whispered about her in the kitchen, but no one dared to confront her. Not directly. She was the lady of the house, the future Marchioness, soon to be Lucien's wife. He didn't see it. Or maybe he didn't want to. He only ever saw her in the drawing room, laughing over politics and wine, or at charity events, shaking hands with donors. She knew how to say the right things when he was nearby, how to fold herself into whatever shape his world demanded. But I saw the folds crack. I started paying attention, where she kept her keys, how she signed letters, who she sent gifts to, and who she whispered about afterward. She trusted me more than the others. I was quiet, careful, always there, always small. But I was listening. And the more I watched her, the more I remembered who she really was. Celine had always envied what she couldn't control. Back then, it had been my scholarship, my independence, my closeness with Lucian. She'd pretended to support me while planting little doubts in the ears of everyone around me. I just worry about her. She pushes herself too hard. Don't you think she's overwhelmed? She'd say. Now she had the house, the ring, the staff. But she still watched Lucian too closely when he left a room. Still clung to compliments like lifelines, still obsessed over shadows. That's what insecurity does. It doesn't vanish when you win. It just looks for new corners to hide in. One night, she asked me to stay late in her room. Said she needed help sorting jewelry for the ambassador's wife's visit. I stood beside her, polishing earrings I once dreamed of wearing, as she tried on necklace after necklace, her tone flat and distracted. Then she spoke like she was thinking aloud. You know, he doesn't touch me. Not really. He says he's being respectful, but sometimes I wonder. She trailed off. I didn't answer. She glanced at me through the mirror. Do you think he still misses her? Her. Me. I didn't flinch. I think grief doesn't leave just because we pretend it has. Her eyes narrowed. Then she smiled thin and sharp. Clever for a maid. I said nothing. But that night, when I returned to my cot, I pressed my hand to my chest and whispered, he doesn't touch her. That meant something. Something small but real. And that was how I would win. Not through rage, not through pity, but by becoming something she could never be, someone he missed before he even knew why. It happened by accident. One of the housekeepers was complaining about storage, something about the guest wing being cluttered with boxes that hadn't been touched since the renovations. I offered to help, not because I cared about clutter, but because that part of the house had been closed off since the engagement. The moment I stepped into the corridor, my breath caught. The floor still creaked the way I remembered. The light through the windows still curved the same across the faded rug. I hadn't seen this wing since before. Before I died, before the veil and the blood and the silence. I told her I'd handle the boxes alone. She didn't argue. No one ever did when I asked quietly. Enough. The first 2 crates were filled with drapery and old photo frames. Then I opened a smaller chest, wooden, worn, locked with a clasp that had long since rusted. Inside, beneath folded scarves and loose pens, was something that didn't belong. A small leather-bound journal with a broken ribbon. My journal. My fingers shook when I opened it. The first page bore my handwriting, slanted, exact, imperfect in all the places only I would recognize. And the first line? He smiled today when I told him I hated olives, said he'd never serve them in the house again. I had written that the week he proposed. I sank to the floor and turned the pages slowly. Entry after entry. Some short, some rambling about dinners. We had arguments we whispered through, dreams we hadn't even shared yet. And then the final week. I stopped when I saw the date. The dress is almost finished. I'm scared. Not of him, but of everything changing too fast. Celine says it's normal. She says it means I care. I pressed my palm to the ink like I could pull the words back into my chest. Celine had read this. She had seen my doubts, my fear, my love. She knew exactly where to stab me. The betrayal bloomed all over again, sharp and hot. It wasn't just that she killed me. It was that she used my heart to aim, read my pages, saw every crack in my armor, then slipped the knife right between them, and I let her. I thought about burning the journal, hiding it again. But something in me had changed. I didn't need to erase the past to win. I needed to remember it. All of it. Because love without memory is just longing. But love that remembers, it becomes a weapon. I tucked the journal beneath my blouse and walked back through the corridor like I was still just a maid. No one looked at me. No one asked what I was carrying, and that was the power they. I still thought I was small, but I was holding a past they couldn't rewrite, and I was done pretending it never happened. After I found the journal, I started walking differently. Not proud, not bold. That would have drawn suspicion, but grounded, like I had roots again, like I remembered who I was beneath the apron and calloused hands. And maybe that's what changed everything, because Lucian started noticing me. Not in the way men notice women. Not with that lazy, possessive hunger I'd seen in his peers. His eyes lingered differently. Not on my body, but on my silences, my stillness. Like he was trying to name a feeling without any words. The first time he paused, we were in the library. I'd been sent to dust the top shelves, something I did often just to feel close to the books I used to love. He walked in, half on a call and then stopped mid-sentence. His phone dropped slowly to his side. "You hum when you work," he said. I froze. Duster midair. "What?" I asked. "Careful. Quiet." He stepped closer, narrowing his eyes like he was trying to see through a fog. "That song." His brow furrowed. "My mother used to sing that. I haven't heard it in years." I shrugged gently. "It's an old melody." He didn't move, just watched me for another long moment before giving a slow, almost confused nod and walking away. That night I stared at the ceiling in the servants' quarters and whispered the song again to myself. He remembered it. He remembered something. It wasn't much, but it was a start. After that, the small moments grew. He started asking for me by name. "Have Amara bring it. Ask Amara to prepare the study. Tell Amara to coordinate with the kitchen staff." Celine noticed. She didn't say it directly. She was too clever for that, but the commands got sharper, the hours longer. She once spilled wine on the carpet and made me scrub it out while she watched from a chaise, eyes glittering with suspicion. "You're efficient," she mused. "Funny. I never noticed." I smiled. "Maybe you weren't looking." Munchen didn't like that, but she couldn't do anything. Not yet. Not while Lucien still saw me as the quiet, competent maid, the one who kept the estate running while his fiancée oversaw flower arrangements and dinner parties. He asked me about books one afternoon, just casually. "Have you read any of the old philosophy in the West Wing?" he asked. I nodded. "Some. I like the Stoics." He blinked. "You don't strike me as the Stoic type." "Then you haven't looked very closely." He smiled, just faintly, like a crack in his armor. Later that week, he left a copy of Meditations on the small table outside the servant dining area. No note, but I knew the old Lucian was still there. The one who used to scribble poetry in the margins of military briefings. The one who once held my face in his hands and said, "You see me even when I'm trying not to be seen." That version of him hadn't disappeared. He was just buried. And maybe so was I, but not for long. Because every time he looked at me now, there was hesitation, familiarity, something he was too logical to admit, but too human to ignore. And if love begins with memory, even the faintest spark, then I just needed to keep feeding it, one glance at a time. The week of the engagement gala, the house turned into a stage. Every corridor buzzed with florists, tailors, crystal deliveries, wine vendors whispering about the guest list like royalty was coming. Celine was in her element, floating from room to room in silk robes and pastel heels, directing people with that clipped sweetness she used when she wanted obedience without blood. I kept to the shadows, but shadows still have eyes. 3 days before the event, the seamstress arrived, a small woman with quick fingers and sharp vision. She brought fabric, pins, mood boards, then set up in the sunroom where the light was clearest. Celine called me in by name. "Amara," she said, flicking her hair over her shoulder. "We need hands." I stood behind her as the seamstress adjusted her posture in the dress. It was ivory satin, embroidered along the sleeves, fitted at the waist. My throat tightened when I saw the hemline. I knew that hem because I had designed it. It wasn't a coincidence. She'd pulled the pattern from the sketches I used to keep in my journal, the one she had stolen before she took my life. It had been altered slightly. Different neckline, a new back, but the bones were mine. My dream, my vision now fitted to her like some cruel costume. The seamstress pointed to the bottom. "There's a snag here. Someone needs to rethread the pearls before Saturday." Celine turned to me slowly. "Amara sews, don't you?" I nodded. "Good. Fix it and don't screw it up. This is one of a kind." I took the fabric in my hands that night, alone in the servants' wing, the weight of it nearly unbearable. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from rage. Every stitch I made was a breath through clenched teeth. I wanted to tear it just once. One tiny rip, invisible to the eye, that would ruin it during the walk down the marble stairs. But I didn't. That would have been too easy, too loud. I finished it perfectly. Because revenge isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's letting someone wear what they stole, then watching them choke on the memory of who it was meant for. The night of the gala arrived. The estate was glowing, chandeliers lit, violins echoing through the halls, guests in long gowns and polished shoes speaking in soft, wealthy tones. I carried a silver tray up the staircase, careful, measured, invisible, and halfway up he saw me. "Lucien." He stood at the top in formal dress, his eyes scanning the crowd, then locking onto mine. He didn't smile, he didn't look away, and I didn't blink. That moment, brief, electric, felt like everything stopped. The music dulled, the voices hushed. I could hear my own heartbeat, pounding like it remembered the night I died. And maybe so did he. A guest passed in front of me. By the time the path cleared, he was gone. But I knew he'd felt it too. The flicker, the pull, the past bleeding through the gold trim of the present. And later that night, when I returned to my cot, I whispered to the air. "You looked at me like I was real, like I wasn't just a servant, like something in you finally remembered what you used to promise me, even if you didn't understand why." After the gala, something shifted in the walls. The servant spoke softer. The halls echoed longer. Even Celine seemed more brittle, snapping at the staff with less elegance than before. She was slipping just a little, but enough for me to notice. Lucien was quieter too. I watched him walk the estate grounds alone more often. He paused in rooms. He used to pass through without blinking, like he was listening for something that wasn't speaking. That week, the head housekeeper sent me to reorganize the storage rooms in the East Wing. Rooms filled with things deemed unnecessary, which in Celine's world meant anything that reminded Lucien of before. That's where I found it. A carved wooden box, its latch rusted but loose. I recognized it before I opened it. It had belonged to Lucien's mother, a keepsake box she used to place next to the piano, where we'd sometimes sit together, sipping tea and whispering about life. I hadn't seen it since the night I died inside. Were loose trinkets, a dried flower, 2 broken cufflinks, a worn-out fountain pen, and at the bottom a letter. My letter, the one I wrote the night before our wedding. The paper was slightly crinkled, folded carefully, still sealed with the wax I'd melted myself. He never read it. He never even opened it because she had taken it. Tears stung the backs of my eyes as I held it between my fingers. The weight of every unspoken word pressing down on my chest like stone. I sat on the floor, the cold seeping through the fabric of my skirt, and slowly opened the seal. Lucien, I don't know why I'm so afraid tonight. Maybe it's the change. Maybe it's how much I love you. Enough to terrify me. Enough to make me wonder if anything so precious can last. I had told him everything. My hopes, my fear of being forgotten once I became part of his world. My need to know I wouldn't disappear behind the title. And at the end I had written, "Please tell me you see me. The real me. Not the role, not the bride. Just the girl who once said yes under the grapevines before either of us knew what yes would cost." I folded the letter again. No rage, no revenge, just grief. The next day I slipped it under his study door. No name, no explanation. I didn't need him to know it was me. I just needed the words to reach him at last. That evening, I watched from the hallway as he opened it. I saw the way his eyes stopped scanning and started reading. I saw the way his breath caught, like a thread had been yanked too hard inside his chest. He didn't move for a long time, didn't call anyone, didn't tear it up. Just sat there, holding the pages like they were a memory he'd misplaced. And I let him sit in it. Not because I wanted him to hurt, but because I wanted him to feel what it meant to be seen, the way I had begged to be, right before the world took me away. I didn't expect it to happen like that. Not with fireworks, not with screaming. Just a whisper, a slip of a tongue in a hallway not meant for secrets. It was the youngest maid, Lena, barely 16. More eyes than sense. She'd been carrying wine to the sitting room late at night when she heard Celine's voice through the door. Laughter first, then something else. She begged. "You know," Celine had said. She actually thought he'd come. That letter. Pathetic. I nearly left it out just to see what he'd do. Then a pause. "And now look, she's dust," Lena told me the next morning, her voice shaking, fingers trembling around the handle of a teacup. "I didn't mean to hear it," she whispered. But she said it like it was funny. I believed her because I'd lived it. And now so had someone else. The next few days moved slowly, carefully, like the house was holding its breath. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. There's power in waiting, in watching the spider spin her web wider and tighter until she's tangled herself. Celine noticed the shift. She must have felt it in the silence between the staff, the sideways glances, the way Lucien no longer lingered after her stories. Something in her started to crack, thin lines forming behind her smile. Then the real blow landed. One of Lucien's estate clerks, a man loyal to his mother, found discrepancies in the estate logs from the week of my death. Records Celine had ordered sealed payments made to a driver who never showed up, supplies for a fire retardant system that had never been installed. Questions surfaced. Lucian started asking them, and when he did, she panicked. She came to me in the linen room, alone for once. Her voice was low, but sharp enough to draw blood. "What did you do?" I met her eyes. "Nothing yet." She stared at me like she finally saw it. That I wasn't some meek, scrubbing little servant. That I wasn't scared of her anymore. "You think he'll believe you?" she hissed. "You think this changes anything?" "No," I said, stepping closer. "But it changes everything for you, because the truth wasn't just coming out. It had already started." Whispers among the staff turned into murmurs among the guests. A noblewoman left a dinner early, her expression tight. A family friend cancelled their RSVP to the wedding, and Lucian. He stopped touching Celine's arm in public, stopped finishing her sentences, stopped smiling when she entered the room. He was grieving again, but not for her, for something or someone he couldn't quite name. That night I found him in the music room alone, sitting at the piano he hadn't touched in years. He played something soft, something sad. And when I entered to clean, he didn't look up, just said quietly, "She wrote about this song in the letter." I stayed silent. He kept playing. "I never read it until now. I never knew." His voice broke a little on the last word. He didn't know who I was. Not truly. But some part of him was reaching. And all I had to do now was let him remember. Because the woman who killed me had finally begun to fall. And the man I loved, he was finally turning toward the light that still remembered how to reach him. I left before dawn. No storm, no fire, no dramatic confessions echoing through marble halls. Just me. A bag slung over my shoulder and the soft echo of my boots against the servant stairs. I'd climbed 1,000 times. It was time. I'd stayed long enough. Long enough for Colleen's mask to slip, for the cracks in her story to stretch wide enough that even Lucian couldn't ignore them anymore. The engagement was off quietly. Yes, formally unannounced, but done. She'd left the house 3 days ago, face pale and mouth tight. I never saw her again. Lucian never asked me why I stayed through it all. Maybe he didn't want to know. Maybe he did know. Deep down. He never named it. But he saw me now. Not as a maid, not as a ghost, as something he couldn't categorize. Something that unsettled him in a way he didn't yet have words for. I passed the library on my way out. The piano room, the garden hall where we used to race each other to the lemon trees. Every step felt both heavier and lighter, like I was carrying myself for the first time. He found me at the front gate. I didn't hear him coming, just felt it. The hush in the air, the weight of him behind me. "I thought you'd stay," he said. I turned. He wasn't wearing the coldness anymore. No noble mask. Just him. Lucian. Eyes tired, voice raw, jaw tense. Like he didn't know whether to stop me or let me go. "I can't," I said quietly. He stepped closer. "Then tell me who you are." I looked up at him, really looked, and for a moment I saw it flicker there. Recognition. Not full, not certain, but real. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the letter. Still folded, worn at the edges. "I've read it every night." I swallowed. "You were supposed to get it before the wedding." I didn't. "I know." The silence between us stretched, gentle and aching. "I think," he said slowly. "I knew something was wrong. I think part of me always did. I just didn't want to see it." I nodded. We both didn't. He took another step. "Close now." "I don't know what this is," he admitted. "But when you're in the room, I remember how to breathe." That should have broken me, but it didn't because I wasn't here to be chosen. Not anymore. I reached up and touched his cheek just once. Light. Final. Then breathe, I whispered, and let me go. He didn't stop me. He didn't beg. He just stood there, holding the letter, watching me walk through the gates he once swore would be ours forever. I didn't look back because this time I wasn't leaving empty-handed, carried a second chance, a name I made mine, a love I remembered but no longer chased. I didn't get the wedding, but I got something better. I got myself back. And that was enough.